Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our ACLA meeting this evening. We are blessed to have once again as our speaker, our guest, we have a Paulo-Juarez Pereira, who's going to be sharing the third and I believe the final part, at least for now, of his life testimony. And then 10 years from now or 20 years from now, he'll come back and give us the next part. But we've all been inspired by what we've heard so far, and he's even provided notes for those of us on the call. And I noticed you titled this your testimony notes "A Hymn of Gratitude," and that's very moving that you're doing that. So, Paulo, I will turn this over to you to take over from where we left off, and that's it. There you go, Dr. Pereira.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. Part of what I will be doing today is to explain or to share with you about my decision to be with this sanctuary family. And I was thinking about that and thought of, what kind of thing can I say, well, my experience that somebody else could use as well. So this is what I will be saying today. And I'll recall that last time I was talking about a big trunk filled with books or filled with photo albums. And you can just look at the cover for a photo album, or you can open up. So today I'll be opening up a little bit. There's a question about my work with Causa and also my work with Dr. Seung-Hoon Lee. How come all of a sudden I am in Korea working with Dr. Seung-Hoon Lee? And I have a list of the books that I worked on. Some of them you probably are familiar with. And then I think I already said some about that. So I'll just mention the books and how come I worked with those books. The first one that I worked with was Explaining Unification Thought. And that is when I was in Korea, and Dr. Seung-Hoon Lee was giving us a 21-day workshop. And then at the end, he asked me to, representing the class, to give a lecture on any topic that I wanted to talk about. So I chose a topic, spoke to him. So at the end, afterwards, after the ceremony was over and we're getting ready to leave, he came to me and then he asked if I wanted to stay with you. I think I mentioned that before. To stay in Korea, and Dr. Woh Pak, which was my central figure for the Causa work, he said, well, yes, that's a good idea because we're going to be using that book in our Causa work. So I stayed, and at that time they were working with Explaining Unification Thought. And that was 1980. So computers were not, like word processors were not a big thing yet in Korea. So, but I think I had a little of some kind of maybe a Japanese type of word processing. But we did it, and I went back to New York and we continued. And Dr. Lee made all the high-level communication for the funding, and we printed it. But he was adamant about the color of the book. I came out a very nice blue color. So that was the first one. And then there was fundamentals came afterwards. And as for essentials, I spent quite a bit of time in Japan. But one book that gave us a lot of challenge was the End of Communism, because it has a lot of notes at the end Mr. Akifumi Otani from Japan ended up coming to New York, and he parked himself over there and stayed for however much it took. And we got it done. We got it done. Now, all the research, we're just looking at the form and doing some editing, making it more academic and following style rules, things like that. But all the content had come from the folks in Japan. So for me, it was certainly a privilege working with that group, because Dr. Lee was a living testimony of dedication. When I was in Korea, he would arrive at the office at 6 a.m. and he won't leave until about 6 p.m. day after day after day. So he had a very high standard for his work. Anyway, at that time, I was I was going through what I said was my 40-year pilgrimage. That was from 1977 to 2017. And my privilege and my pilgrimage was like a Moses type of course. In my pilgrimage, I did some things like, for example, the Khalsa work, but I was very much aware that I was on a pilgrimage. I felt, in many ways, isolated and I felt it difficult to connect with the movement at that time. Especially there was a time when, by the the decision was made that the church was no longer. And I honestly, I had difficulty understanding, and all the things that happened afterwards. But when 1917 came, I said, okay, I'm done. I'm going to connect again. I opened, doors over there, the social media. I began to write long articles, and I put myself out there. And I'm also, I was working with veterans here in the area where I live. And I said, okay, I'm done with my with my pilgrimage, and I'm back again. And it wasn't long after that I got to know the folks of Sanctuary in Los Angeles. I knew John Alexander. He used to be called Mark Alexander. Now he goes for John Alexander. And he used to be good friends from way back, in San Francisco, Oakland. And he said, why don't you join us? Because at that time they were having all kinds of lockdown events where, you do by Zoom. Say, okay, I was in Michigan, and I could connect with them over there in California. Eventually, they stopped with Zoom meetings, and that I began to, and then he advised me to connect with Dr. Richard Banzer, and I began to attend lectures on Mondays, and that has been for quite some time. And also, I made connections with my Brazilian friends back in Brazil. They also have Zoom activities. But while I was in my pilgrimage, I visited quite a bit of the United States. I was in Kentucky, I was in Montana, and I went back to California. back in the sense that California was the place that I went to when I first arrived in the United States. It was almost like my place of birth in America, if you put it that way. So I went back there again, and then eventually parked myself here in Michigan. And Michigan worked out very well for us because it is more rational and reasonable than the California traffic, and every year the things became more expensive overall. But while it lasted, it was good because I was living right there in Silicon Valley, and there was a lot of things happening at that time. Okay, but now I come to the point, which was, I think some of you was asking me, why the sanctuary? And there was one of the lectures that Father did. He spoke, I think, he spoke on one of those Sunday speeches, and he was talking about the 8 stages. The 8 stages. And so, okay, maybe talking about the 8 stages may be a good way. I thought this may be a good way to explain how come people feel attracted to certain movements. Okay, and the 8 stages, I mean, if you go to page 4, there are two 8 stages. I found out from reading that Father's speech. And if you want, I can maybe send you a copy of that speech to this group. But usually we talk about like the servant of servants. That is like when you first begin to make a connection with God after being pretty much a slave of Lucifer after the fall and all that. Okay, so all of a sudden we begin to make a connection with God, but we can't talk to God directly. So we talk to a servant of God, and I'm a servant of the servant of God. But hey, that's a connection with God. We're making progress, and that's the first step. I think Noah was, if I have it correctly, Noah was in the position of servant of servant. And then there was the servant position, in which a lot of the Jews, they were in the servant position. That means God speaks to them directly, and mostly speaks in terms of commands and directions, and trying to find out, have you done what I ask you to do? And because that is more like a master-servant relationship. That is the way that the flow of communication goes. But then there is an adopted son, and I think at least in Christian theology, they might say that people are adopted children of God. So there is through Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit, they come to adopted children. And then there is also the stepchildren, the stepson. And finally, we come to the position. Now, the thing about adopted son, stepson, and true son is that they live in the father's house. They have, they have that connection, and they hear directly the dad, the mom. So, they are part of the family. And then eventually there is the true son, which enjoys the two things, and the lineage, which is life, and also the connection. That living together with the parents, they can receive words directly, they can be guided directly, and that flow, the sweet love that exists between parents and children. That comes when we are in the position of true children. And then and in this, I've seen these 8 in different ways. Like in this one and that one that I read came from tparents.org. It goes to mother, father, and God. That. But I've seen also in different ways would be like parents, husband and wife, or parent and parents, and then God, or grandparents and then God. So regardless, you can put it in different ways, but regardless, there are 8 steps. So that is a vertical line, which I didn't know. I only knew after reading this article or this speech. The other one is the horizontal line, and that is our connection to society, our connection to society. We start out as individual, next there is the family, there is the clan, the tribe, the nation, world, cosmos. Finally, we go back to God. And even these 8, sometimes they're put in different order or differently. But we know that there are 8 of them. And an important thing is to understand what kind of people are those and how do I connect with them. But in any case, our goal is to go back to God. So I can go back and ask the question, well, how did you find yourself attracted to the sanctuary? And I've come to the conclusion that you're going to be attracted to a group if that group somehow satisfies the hunger of your soul. There is a hunger in your soul, and then somehow this group seems to be more advanced in also by staying connected with them, you find yourself being either learning or growing or going in a direction that you very much would like to go. Perhaps you didn't even know how to define your goal, how to define your goal. Like for example, the second king is very aware of the nation. He's aware of the nation. He is a patriot, but his view is even bigger, involving countries, involving the world. So somebody who comes close to the movement, the sanctuary movement, they can feel the vertical line. In other words, do we have that camaraderie? Do people connect with one another? Are they there for them, in times when they need it? In other words, is there this familiarity? Do you feel like you fit in as adopted son or true son, stepson or true son? And then afterwards, are you one of the elders of the group that you are like a parent to in the group? Is that something that is working out for you? I think a movement that has those kinds of ambience and environment in which people are filled with life and vigor and connectivity. It makes sense to keep coming back. Hey, I like them. Keep coming back, right? The other thing is that people have connections to different levels of society. Somebody is very much an individual person. They're working out issues for them, but they'd like to have a family, and they certainly are connected with the nation, the clan, the tribe, the nation, the world. So certainly there are people who come and maybe there are guests coming, and they are already very much connected in large scale activity in society. So for those, they and they can see, they are at that level. They can see that the sanctuary group is concerned about those levels and are doing things about those levels. So that may be attracted to them. So yeah, I would like to stay around because they are doing things that I find worthwhile and that I would like myself to do. So that there is the vertical line, which is more internal, how I am growing towards a relationship with other people around me, and eventually towards a relationship with God, more internal. And then there is a more external horizontal line, which places us in great connections with society. So that might be a good way to approach people who come, say they're visiting the group. If it's somebody who is very much connected with society, then those are the issues that maybe we should raise with them and show that the sanctuary group has that large scope, so the social engagement as well. Or if it's somebody who is into their own internal development, more vertical, then of course there is the divine principle. There are so many wonderful books that can certainly help them, and so that they can grow and even further, along those lines, and that will give them a reason to become a member. Become a member that way. So those two 8 stages, both the vertical and both the horizontal, can explain to us individually. That would be a good question. What part of that spoke to you, or where were you when you came? That you found this to be an interesting place to be connected with, or else could also be the horizontal line. There is one book I'd like to mention, and then I'll return to so that we can have a discussion among ourselves. It is on page 3, and in the lower half of the page, talk about my life in Michigan, the Vietnam Veterans of America. There is a book. That we call it the Kettles book, with the title "We Answer the Call." I'd like to mention a little bit about that book. And this is the book here, "We Answer the Call." And I am here too. This guy here with a hat. That picture was taken when I had just received my commission, the 2nd lieutenant. And I was thinking, my God, I got this commission. I know where I'm going. Okay, so this book, in here there is a Medal of Honor. Okay, if you don't know, the Medal of Honor is the highest military medal that somebody can obtain as for valiant service in the armed forces. So one of our buddies here, and this is this gentleman here. His name is Kettles, he was awarded a Medal of Honor. I mean, it took a long time. It was a very long process, but eventually, yeah, he went to the White House. It's always given by the President of the United States. And two of our veterans went with him. And we came to be good friends because we would sometimes go to high schools and we talk about our experience in Vietnam. And he would always talk about his experiences. But yeah, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. And I had the idea that we should tell his story. I wanted to be able to tell his story, but also involve other people. So I had the hardest time even to be able to talk to him because his wife was ill. She was always like in a wheelchair. They have both passed away, by the way. So I would call and I tried to introduce myself. And before I was too far about introducing myself, they would. Anyway, there was one day we're having a dinner among the veterans, and she was sitting down by herself because the husband was moving around, and she has sitting down on a wheelchair. I came down. I came to the table, and I said, I introduced myself, and I said, I would like to have a chance to talk to Colonel Kettles. That was how we talked about him, Colonel Kettles. I have an idea for a book. I said, many people have written about him, but in this book, he will be able to write his story himself. And I got a napkin, a pen, I put my name and a telephone number. About 3 or 4 weeks later, I got a phone call from them. So I was able to make a connection. And I mean, Colonel Kettles, he was just a buddy. He was a good guy, very simple. And I gave him the idea. He liked my idea, which was we're going to get stories from a lot of veterans and put them all together with pictures and all that. And in there will be his story as well. So, and then I got 2 more individuals in those. Each one got 2 more. So we have a nice little group. And one of the people that were there was not a Vietnam veteran. She was a retired colonel, but she knew how to edit books. She was connected with that kind of world. So she became the editor, Colonel retired Christine Cook. And we went through the steps. We got all the material and all that. And then the Colonel Kettles passed away. And it wasn't unexpected. Everybody was expecting. Passed away. And then during the ceremonies for the funeral, somebody came, introduced himself. He was the son-in-law of the colonel. And we said, yeah, we're doing this book. We're excited about it. And just kind of sharing with him. He said, how much do you have the money to print it? He said, yeah, we're doing fundraising. We got about half the money, and we're very sure we're going to get there and we're going to get it done. I said, yes. And then he said, I will print it for you. I said, what? I said, I'll print it for you. We'll be glad to give you the money that we already have now. No, don't worry about that. he gave us a phone number, contact this person. Turned out he has some kind of foundation, and he's always printing books, and he already had people with whom he worked. So he called up this woman somewhere another state, didn't matter. He says, all right, follow our own system, and also our own format, and let's print the book. And we began to work with this person, and by golly, we got it done. And just a few days ago, that original money, which is about $300, but a bit more than $3,000. So they say, well, maybe we should have a reprint, because we give away. We don't sell them; we just give them away. So that was part of my story is here, of course. My story is here too, and so that was part of what my connections here in Michigan. And one thing I do with the veterans, we have every month we gather together for prayer. We pray for the nation, and they're mostly people who are very religious now with church attendance, or used to be. So they are very open up to doing that. And then if they want to pray together, we go up to a place in Ann Arbor where there is a veterans park. So go to the veterans park, and there is a beautiful American flag there. There are benches. We can go there and pray. Or another option, they can pray at home. And the other thing I do for them, I also, that's for about 5 years now, I do a newsletter for them. Every month we do a newsletter. And in this newsletter, we have a monument for everybody, for anybody who died in Vietnam as a military, in the armed services. And then their name is like in Washington, D.C. It's here in our monument as well. And every month we remember the individuals who died in that particular month. Like if they died in July, then the month of July, we'll show their picture, and it will show, we'll have a little bit of their life. So that way, we never forget. Okay, I think I am coming to a good point to stop here. And do I have? I would like to find out from you if you think the 8 stages might be a good way to talk to people that are interested in coming closer to our movement. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pereira, for this testimony. This you shared on so many different levels here. You covered a lot of ground, but it's very deep and very beautiful. Thank you very much.